Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
A very good morning to you, or good afternoon, depending on where you are and what time you're listening to this. It's Sunday, it's the 28th of February 2016. My name is Richie Allen. This is Sunday View, and I hope it finds you well. It's a beautiful morning in Manchester, absolutely beautiful. It's been a lovely couple of days. It's been very, very cold, but it's been lovely, and we can't complain about that. I'm a little bit on the horse side this morning, a little bit on the horse side. Don't worry about that. I was at an event in Manchester yesterday, and at times over the noise, it was difficult to be heard. Not that I was doing that much talking, so I'm a little bit on the horse side, but I'll get over it. A wonderful day yesterday, by the way. I do want to, excuse me, I do want to mention that Wake Up Manchester staged an event at Piccadilly Gardens in Manchester City Centre yesterday, and I was privileged to meet some amazing people doing their absolute level best to alert others who are not familiar with programmes like this and the information that is discussed on programmes like this, but to alert others to what's really going on behind the veil of lies that is the mainstream media, and to tell people there is another point of view, there are other facts, there is other evidence that you're not seeing, that you're not getting. And I want to pay tribute to Victoria Lilly, to Paul Heald, to Bryn, to Angie, to Alan, to John Lundy, Sean McDonald, to Dave, Frank, Mike, Janet and Steve, and not least Chris Seeley from dataclinic.co.uk. I was privileged to meet all those people yesterday in Manchester. Terrific day. It was loads of music, loads of talk. It was an interesting thing though, which did happen. While the guys and the girls of Wake Up Manchester were doing their thing, the Socialist Workers' Party were on scene as well, as they often are, to their credit, in town centres and city centres at weekends, you know, putting their case to passers-by. There was one gentleman handing out leaflets, and the leaflets were basically saying that, you know, we should let in all refugees and we have a duty to, and they had a big poster saying never again, I think referring to previous horrible wars where, you know, people had to flee countries and were looking for asylum and were ignored and all of that. I spoke to one of them and I said, you do know that, you know, essentially you're missing a huge point here. I'm not one for telling people they're wrong. I don't do that. You're wrong. I said, you know, you're missing a big point here, you know. And I tried to get into explaining to the guy that there is another train of thought with regards to refugees and why refugees are being driven out of the, you know, obviously countries like Syria and laterally Libya and other countries. But the guy didn't really want to know, and he looked at me kind of contemptuously. He certainly had no idea that I was a journalist, I don't think. But, you know, he was about to begin, he was about to bring out the R word and say that, you know, that idea is basically racism. But I wouldn't allow him to do that. And I said, look, I'm going to leave you alone. You're obviously not interested in listening to what I have to say. So you carry on telling people that it's okay to let everybody into the country when actually that's madness. It's utter madness. And it wouldn't be happening if it didn't suit the agenda of the, you know, the growing fascist superstate of the European Union. It wouldn't be happening otherwise. He didn't want to know. A lot of people don't want to know. I got to mention davidike.com/headlines. Get on there. There's a terrific video cast on davidike.com this week about the European Union. It's very, very, very good. I do recommend you get it. David always posts 20 to 25 minutes of his weekly video cast on YouTube, on the David Icke channel on YouTube. But I think to subscribe to David's videocast, it's only a couple of pounds a month. I highly recommend it. And it is really, really good. He's sporting, in this week's videocast, David, a rather fetching blue T-shirt. I'm not sure that blue is his colour, but it's very good. And it's a very good videocast this week. It's always very good and very thought-provoking. This week it's pretty exceptional, I think. Do check out, of course, davidicke.com/headlines, because much of what I might be talking to you about in the next half an hour, 35 minutes, you will find, and you will find great analysis of it on davidicke.com. So again, as usual, there's lots to tell you about, but Sunday View, traditionally, I start off by having a look through the British broadsheet newspapers and the tabloids. Let's have a look at the Sunday Times. Well, the Sunday Times are reporting that David Cameron faces a leadership threat from his Conservative Party MPs, even if he carries the day in the EU referendum on June 23rd. The Sunday Times are saying that senior Tories have warned him to tone down his attacks on the Eurosceptic MPs or face a confidence vote after the June 23rd referendum. That's in the Sunday Times. Sunday Times is a subscription website. I always say this every Sunday, so I can't get into the newspaper. I could have gone to the local news agent, I suppose. That has occurred to me. Yes, that would have been something to do. But no, I'm not handing over £1.50 for the Sunday Lies owned by Rupert Murdoch. No, I don't think I'll do that. But yeah, that's their big story. He's in trouble because of his conduct around the referendum, whether he wins or loses. That's what they're saying. The Mail on Sunday is also leading on what it says is a Tory feud over Europe amid reported clashes within the party ahead of the referendum. Their headline, the Mail on Sunday headline, is Meltdown. Revealed. Foreign Secretary's shocking 4-letter assault on rival. He flew into a rage after trying to hide Eurocrats' secret report on the Prime Minister's deal. And what that is that Philip Hammond called Conservative MP Sir Bill Cash's he called Sir Bill Cash a total shit for publishing a secret Brussels legal report on the EU and the EU deal negotiated even by David Cameron. They're calling each other's you're a total shit. What a shit! What a proper shit you are. That's what they're doing. The press will, knowingly and unknowingly, in some instances, will continue to play this like the soap opera it's meant to be. Boris against Dave, Philip Hammond against Michael Gove, Bill Cash, Meltdown. There's genuine discourse. There's genuine disagreement on Europe. Now there is, of course. I've said this before. There are many MPs whom, on their own conscience, wouldn't want Britain to remain within the European Union. But I put it to you, and I won't dwell on this, I've said it before, that irrespective of how things go in the next around about 3 months, isn't it now, to the vote? However, whatever happens, Britain will not vote to leave the European Union. The Observer, the Sunday Observer, the in-out referendum on the EU, it says, does the Observer, that Europe Minister David Lidington has warned Britain could face a decade of massive economic uncertainty if it left the Union. George Osborne has been doing that as well. The Chancellor of the Exchequer had given any opportunity over the last few days. He's telling any journalist who will listen that all of the top economists in the world, the leading financial people of the world, the men and women who run the financial institutions, are all saying it'll be a disaster if England leaves the European Union. It's a lie, of course. It's a lie. European countries not in the European Union do better in trading with EU bloc countries. You're better off trading outside the European Union. This has been proven as an absolute fact. Not being said, though, in any of the papers today. Sunday Express says that figures from the European Union's Eurobarometer study, which it says, the Express, shows optimism about the European Union's future, has plummeted in all but 3 member states, including the Netherlands and Germany. There's a story on davidicke.com today about the Germans planning on leaving in 3 million more refugees over the next few years. Maybe that has got something to do with the growing feeling of let's call it the growing anti-Brussels feeling that is revealing itself in some of these polls being conducted. The Express is certainly an anti-European newspaper, to its credit. The Independent on Sunday says that a second so-called Snoopers Charter could be rushed through Parliament. The paper says that a new surveillance bill will be introduced this week by Home Secretary Theresa May, and it'll be passed before the EU referendum. Now, this has widespread opposition right across Westminster, but it doesn't matter. It looks like they're going to try and push it through anyway. Number of parties and MPs and independents have been calling for a serious revision of what's contained in the Snoopers Charter, which is terrifying, of course, all the more terrifying because there is little or no debate about it on television or radio in this country. I will be returning to that in great detail in the Richie Allen Show, the radio show, in the coming week. Sunday Mirror got a big story on there about Tony Blackburn. It concerns claims that a 15-year-old girl was picked by a world-famous singer while she was attending a recording of Top of the Pops in 1971. The star isn't named. Top of the Pops, for our listeners who don't know what it is or what it was a weekly half-hour television show, BBC show, which basically counted down the pop charts. Jimmy Savile, of course, was the first presenter of it, at least I believe he was. And it ran and ran and ran for decades. I think it's only been in the very recent past that the show was axed, was taken off TV, I think sometime in the last 6 or 7 years, maybe a little bit longer than that. So that's the big story. A world-famous singer seduced tragic BBC girl at 15, according to the Sunday Mirror. They also run with a story about Tony Blackburn, who was sacked by the BBC last week because they said that he wouldn't answer questions about allegations about a girl way back in the early 1970s. So that's it then for the Sunday papers. It's EU-centric today, understandably. It will continue to be EU-centric for the next 12, 13, 14 weeks before we have the referendum here on June 23rd. Something which did disturb me, I mentioned Wake Up Manchester yesterday, which was a wonderful day. It's great to meet people like that, committed people, lovely people, open people, people who have no, there's no edge to them, warm-hearted, welcoming people who are very inclusive. They include everybody. While that's going on, there were clashes between the police and a group calling themselves the Northwest Infidels in Liverpool. Now, we heard a bit about this group last week. Some of the listeners to this programme contacted me on Facebook and said, "Oh, Richie, I'm a bit worried because the Northwest Infidels are planning to march in Manchester." And I said, okay, but I couldn't care less about them and where they march. It's a big city, and it certainly wouldn't put me off going to Piccadilly on Saturday. But they didn't turn up in Manchester. They turned up in Liverpool, and they were filmed by RT. And you can see those films on RT's YouTube channel, clashing with the police and giving the Nazi salute. They're a bunch of vile scum, vile, evil scum. They really are. While they were carrying on in Liverpool, the English Defence League were doing the same in Newcastle. Vile scum, vermin, the worst of the worst. I can't find language angry or hateful enough to describe what these people are. They really are. You see them, you saw them in action say it for me, in Dover some weeks back, screaming abuse at women. There was a woman there, and she was standing there protesting their presence. She was protesting the Northwest infidel presence in Dover, and she was saying that we have to be compassionate with refugees, and that's fair enough. I totally agree with that, even though I think the agenda to get refugees into Europe is sinister. You know that. And you should have heard them screaming at this woman and throwing things at her, calling her a Jewish and a word beginning with C that rhymes with runt. These are scum, real scum. There's not many of them either, thankfully. The thing about the police were inclined to stand there in Liverpool with the shields, with the body shields, and just allow them hurl abuse at them and kick their shields and threaten them. The police were filming them. Hopefully, later on, the police will identify the aggressive ones and will just knock on their doors or turn up at their jobs and drag them away. But give them due process, charge them with a crime, and give them the rights to defend themselves, and eventually find them guilty and then lock them up. Fucking scum. They really are. Shall I leave that there? You don't need to hear me swear and curse about people on a Sunday morning, but they really are disgusting. You know, over the weekend as well, there were anti-Trident demos around the country. Now, rather than me give you the entire Trident nuclear submarine, nuclear deterrent story, if you're not familiar with it, again, check out davidicke.com/headlines, or just put Trident into a search engine and find out all about it there. So there were demos all over the country. London, there was a huge demo attended by Nicola Sturgeon, by Jeremy Corbyn, by lots of people. Because MPs will be voting real soon on whether to renew Britain's ageing Trident nuclear weapons system. And ahead of the protests yesterday, Royal Navy submariner turned whistleblower William McNeely broke his silence and spoke exclusively to Russia Today. Now, you might have heard of McNeely. Back in May of last year, he leaked a report exposing 30 safety and security failures documented over his 3-month tour on board one of Britain's Vanguard submarines. So he blew the whistle, basically. He was lucky not to go to prison. He was dishonourably discharged. He went back to Belfast. He's now hoping to influence the Trident debate and halt the government's drive for renewal. Do you want to hear a bit of McNeely talking to Russia Today? This is well worth listening to. Very good stuff, this.
It's not the people that come first, it's not the land, it's not safety that comes first. They have shown that they'll put nuclear weapons above the people and above the land. They've shown that they're willing to lie just to protect the image of nuclear weapons. They don't check your bags, any boxes you're bringing on board, you're bringing through. They don't check any of that. All you need to get on board is just a couple of fake IDs. And thousands of Royal Navy IDs go missing every year as well, so they could come across one. Does it deter the people that were radicalised in Afghanistan? No. All it does is create a target. Some newspapers, like I said, I had top secret files on my phone and I was on the run and I was learning to speak Russian. That's what they said, like this idea where I'm a traitor who's learned Russian. I've never learned Russian in my life, so they made that up. Another thing they said was, oh, he's crazy, don't listen to him, stuff like that. If I'm crazy, well then they're saying they've let a crazy Russian, Scottish nationalist spy on board. I earned my dolphins, which symbolises, passing your watch phase of the submarine qualification, which basically means you're a fully qualified submariner, and then you get your dolphins. Do a ceremony on board. Another thing that people do is they throw all the whistleblowers into like one pile, like Snowden, Chelsea Manning and all that. But if you actually look at what I did and you look at what they've done, and you start to see that we're polar opposites. My concern was to help the people to increase security and remove a threat. And then what if something happens? I'd be part of the blame because I didn't do anything about it.
It'd be on your conscience.
Yeah, it'd be on your conscience. So releasing the report, even though I lost my career, even though I lost a lot of money, I've got a clear conscience. So if something does happen, at least I know I've warned the people. That's all that matters, really. I love the job. I got a lot of friends in the Navy. I've got nothing against the Navy. The Trident system doesn't reflect the whole Navy. The Navy's, I would still argue, the Royal Navy's still the best Navy in history.
William McNeely's here talking exclusively to RT in advance of the demonstration and the protest against renewing Britain's nuclear deterrent, the Trident submarine programme. Yesterday, huge rallies. If you want to hear Jeremy Corbyn and Nicola Sturgeon and everybody else who attended that rally in London yesterday, you need only go onto YouTube, and all the news networks, pretty much all of them covered it. Channel 4, RT, it's all there. How interesting. The Irish, the country of my birth, my country, the Republic of Ireland, went to the polls on Friday. There was a general election in Friday. Counting began yesterday, Saturday. It still continues into today, does the counting. It's set, the election, the results are set to deliver, according to the BBC today. I will have a look at the Irish Times now in a second. It's set to produce a hung parliament after the poor performance in the poll of the existing coalition. Ireland was governed for the last 4.5 years by Fine Gael, a centre-right party, and Labour, a kind of a centre, allegedly centre-left, one-time centre-left party. Enda Kenny's the outgoing Taoiseach, maybe, the incumbent, and leader of the largest coalition party, Fine Gael, said it was a disappointing election for the party. It's likely, say the BBC, after all the votes are tallied up, that Fine Gael will remain the largest party, but with a narrow lead over the main opposition, Fianna Fáil. And a lot of Irish people are absolutely horrified at the possibility that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil will form a coalition government in Ireland. However, the BBC are saying, well, it's probably not going to happen. It's more likely there'll be a hung parliament. Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin did reasonably well. They did better than they did last time out, saying that they wouldn't go into government with anybody. But even though they wouldn't do that, it's unlikely there will be a hung parliament. They're expecting someone to form a government. As I said, the likely outcome to be Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Both parties, by the way, pro-austerity. Both parties pro-European Union. Both parties pro the sell-off of anything that's worth anything in Ireland to pay off an illegal debt in that country. It's horrifying, really. I put a rant on my own Facebook page last night. I was a little bit pissed when I did it. I had a dry January, and which I always do every year. Had every intention of really sticking with the no alcohol for as long as I could into 2015. But I like a wee drink, so I've moderated it. I have a drink on Saturday. That's all I do. And I had a few yesterday after the Wake Up Manchester with some of the gang there. And I was a little bit worse for wear. And I had a bit of a rant. And I'm kind of happy that I did, really. In my own city, where I was born and bred and reared, in Waterford City, after the first count, the Irish voting system is proportional representation, the single transferable vote. I'm not going to explain that to you. I could very easily. But there's a quota that you must reach. And when you reach that quota, then, the votes left over, your excess votes then, are then distributed then back down the line to the rest of the candidates until somebody else reaches a quota, and so on, so on, so on. But after count one yesterday, they put a woman called Butler, who I have no idea who this woman is. I've not lived in Waterford. I've not set foot in Waterford City in over 12 years, 13 years now. So I've no idea who she is. She might be a nice woman, but what she represents is heinous. And I ranted and raved about the Irish people and about the people of Waterford. What will it take? How much of a fucking in the arse will you have to get from your elected officials? What will they have to do for you before you grow a brain, or even better, grow some balls and go and vote for an anti-austerity candidate? Go and vote for somebody who says it's wrong to brutally punish people in your society based on an illegal debt and on an illegal union. Why would you keep going back to the same well? Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. It sickens me. It really does. Claire Daly did well. Former guest on the show, Richard Boyd Barrett, did well. Some of the anti-austerity independents did well and got back in. John Halligan in Waterford and others. Ben Gilroy didn't fare so well. I'm really sad to report that. Wonderful man. Direct Democracy Ireland. Ben was running for Direct Democracy, didn't do so well, and he's pretty gutted. I have no doubt he is pretty gutted, and I understand that he is. But the Irish are going to get what they deserve. They're going to put a spin on it and say that we did better. Sinn Féin did a bit better, and some of the independents and the Anti-Austerity Alliance did a bit better, and there was some sort of a protest vote. It's utter bollocks. They're going to have a Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil coalition government. All sorts of lies are going to be told about the recovery. The Irish media are talking all the time about Ireland has been doing better than any other country in the Eurozone in the last 2 years in terms of its economic recovery. That's utter bullshit. There's no evidence to back that up whatsoever. Lies. Absolute lies. In some parts of Ireland, there are 40% unemployment. What the fuck will it take, people? What will it take for people to say enough is enough, Yeah, I despise it. I don't miss it one bit. I hated living in Waterford City when I grew up there. I hated every bit of it. And I've never been back since I left, and I probably never will. I hated it. I have a good reason for that. I've gotten into it in the programme in the past. What happened to me when I was a kid. And it was known, what was happening to me was known by my school. It was known by the local authority. Nobody did anything. Nobody gave a damn. Ireland is a cesspool of corruption and filth and sleaze. That's all it is. No fucking time for it. I couldn't care less, really. And and the thing about it, and there are so many people in that country I love and respect. Deeply love and respect. And it kills me to see that country. What it's become. That great revolutionary country. Fake. What did I say yesterday? Faux. I used the word faux. I thought it'd be I thought it'd be literal. Faux Republican parties. We're a Republican party. Fianna Fáil will tell you. One of the most corrupt institutions in the history of global politics. Fianna Fáil. I could be here all day talking about Bertie Ahern and Charles Haughey. And I have friends from school who are involved in that party. I couldn't give a shit. Unbelievable what Ireland has been reduced to. Unbelievable. I'm so sad about it. And on the one hand, I'll tell you I don't care. And then I'll sit there and I'll say I do care. Oh, shall I leave Ireland alone and get away from it? Because it really is crippling me. Right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take a very quick break. When I come back, I'll have more. This is Sunday View. It's a different type of Sunday View. Oh, right. I'll be back in a minute.
Do you want to release the full potential of your soul consciousness and find out how to experience that power in all areas of your life now? Go to livingasyoursoul.com for free guidance with in-depth how-to articles, free healing meditations of creation recordings, free soul solutions, and much, much more. livingasyoursoul.com, making the profound practical.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Indeed. Hillary Clinton. Ever since I heard Gerald Celente say that on my TV show a few years ago in London, it's made me laugh ever since. Hillary Clinton secured a massive win over Bernie Sanders in the South Carolina primary. That's the latest battleground in the race to become the Democratic presidential nominee. Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic presidential nominee and will be the next president of the United States of America. It has been predetermined, have no doubt. It was widely expected, according to the press, that she would win in South Carolina, but it gives her momentum ahead of Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday. Well, that is Super Tuesday, by the way. 11 states come together on Tuesday to vote in their primaries, and it gives you a real clear picture then as to who will be the combatants in the national election in November. Bernie Sanders stuck his chest out and said the campaign was just beginning. She won by a 50-point margin, did Hillary. You're not interested. I know you're not. I can sense it. Richie, we're sick of it because we know what's going to happen too. I know. She was in tears in her, I would say, phony tears. She's not much of an actress, in her victory speech, and spoke about gun control because, as you know by now, a gunman killed 3 people during shootings that ended at a lawn care company in Kansas on Thursday. Hillary Clinton was talking about this and got very emotional. Do you want to hear her? This is timely when we're in the middle of Oscars, the Oscars debacle. Could have talked about that, but I'm not going to. The Oscars take place tonight in Los Angeles, of course. Hillary wouldn't have been out of place. Have a listen to this. Shall I try that again? Yeah, I'll try that again. Here we go.
And tonight, I want to pay tribute to 5 extraordinary women who crisscrossed this state with me and for me. 5 mothers brought together by tragedy. Sabrina Fulton, mother of Trayvon Martin, shot and killed in Florida just for walking down the street. Lucy McBath, mother of Jordan Davis, shot and killed by someone who thought he was playing his music too loud in his car. Maria Hamilton, mother of Dontre, shot and killed by police in Milwaukee. Gwen Carr, mother of Eric Garner, choked to death after being stopped for selling loose cigarettes on the street. And Geneva Reed Veal, mother of Sandra Bland, who died in police custody in Texas. They all lost children, which is almost unimaginable. Yet, they have not been broken or embittered. Instead, they have channeled their sorrow into a strategy and their mourning into a movement. And they are reminding us of something deep and powerful in the American spirit. By now, we all know the story of Flint, Michigan, how a city's children were poisoned by toxic water.
Hillary couldn't give a shit, could she? I mean, you can hear it in her voice. She's a terrible actress. She could not give a shit. I mean, she really couldn't. On the Kansas shootings, President Barack Obama, had this to say.
I do want to say a few words about yet another mass shooting that we've had to endure. As some of you may have heard, yesterday a gunman murdered 3 people and injured 14 others in Heston, Kansas. And this morning I spoke with Mayor Kaufman and expressed our deepest condolences for the victims, their families, and the community as a whole. This comes after last weekend's rampage in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where 6 more innocent Americans were gunned down. And these acts may not dominate the news today, but these are 2 more communities in America that are torn apart by grief.
Yeah, he's a liar, by the way. Those acts do dominate the news today. They get absolute blanket coverage. I don't know where he's getting that from. The liar in thief. What a liar. You know what this is all about? It's about the militarisation of the police. While they're looking for excuses to disarm people, and they really are. Funny enough, my friend and colleague Hayden Hewitt of Live League fame, and he produces the Richie Allen television show, Hayden disagrees with me on this. Hayden is he's got real problems with guns, and I understand that. We didn't grow up in society, or in societies. I grew up in Waterford, he grew up in Manchester. We didn't see guns. We just don't see them. The only time I've ever seen a gun in my life, one of my neighbours was a game shooter. But for food, he would go to, we lived in Ballybeg in Waterford, which is on the edge of Waterford City. And, going north of the city, you're basically in the countryside, basically. Or I should say, west. Yeah, north or west. Yeah, west of the city, yeah. You're heading in then to, because where I was in Ballybeg, you're going west towards Cork, that's right. So to the west, a lot of rural land there was. He used to go out and shoot rabbits and make casseroles and stews out of them. They were lovely, must be said. And it's the only time I ever saw a shotgun or a gun. I was terrified of it because of the noise it made. I've never held one, never shot one. We were thinking about, just for shits and giggles, one Sunday, Caroline and myself were thinking about going clay pigeon shooting. And then I kind of got a turn against it. I don't want to hold a gun. I don't want to have anything to do with guns. I don't like them. But I also don't want the tyrannical law enforcement agencies of certain other governments where people have always had guns to tell them that because of shooting, some of them real, some of them which aren't real, we're going to, bring in draconian gun laws, which ultimately will eventually lead, if they get their way, to disarming people. I really believe that. When we see the militarisation of the police now, the hyper-militarisation of the police, and what I mean by that is, look at any news footage of police officers doing anything in the United States, whether it's attending an incident, whether it's, dealing with a mass rally, These guys look like Robocop now. They look like something that's beyond the military. And that's, of course, in gross violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which was signed into law in 1878 by Rutherford B. Hayes. I won't give you the long-winded version of the act, but the Posse Comitatus Act basically prohibits the government from using military personnel to enforce domestic policies. But they find a way around that now. They're driving tanks now, the police, for fuck's sake. You know, they're buying millions of rounds of full metal jacket armour, those armour-piercing bullets that, if they hit people, they obliterate them. You know, didn't Homeland Security order millions of these only a few years ago? I think InfoWars broke the story. Alex and the gang. You know, Homeland Security for domestic purposes. Why are you buying that sort of stuff? For your own people. So, of course, they're trying to disarm people. I'd be pretty terrified if I was in the United States. Like I said, I don't believe in guns. And if I lived in New York or I lived in Texas or I lived in Carolina, we wouldn't own a gun. We just wouldn't. I don't care if you're listening to this and you're from America and you're saying, oh, it's easy for you to say that. No, I wouldn't. I would not. I don't want to live like that. You know, some bloke is going to break into the house. I'm more likely to kill myself or Caroline with the gun in the panic than I am to kill him. You know, if a guy comes in with a gun, listen, take whatever you want, mate. Just please fuck off and leave us alone, you know. Yeah, it's very noble, Richie, but in a real situation like that, he'd probably kill you. Maybe he would. But that's what's going on. That's what it's really all about. Shall I talk about Syria briefly, shall I? Got into this a lot last week on the show. You will know by now is that a temporary truce in Syria seems like it's holding up. This is according to the Associated Press now. This is hilarious. They say some limited violations have taken place, but no major breach. The front lines in Syria's biggest city, Aleppo, are said to be calm. It's the first major cessation of hostilities in Syria's 5-year war. Associated Press are brilliant. It's a war, they say. Aid deliveries are due into besieged areas later on. You know, I mentioned this week a few times Patrick Henningsen, 21st Century Wire. I obviously talk about David a lot. I think they're on the money. This is all about, this cessation of hostilities is to give ISIS time to regroup, because ISIS are being driven to the brink of extinction by the Syrian army and by Russian forces. I'm not suggesting Russian forces on the ground. They are not, or at least we're told they're not. But the aerial bombardment of Russia has had huge success against Islamic State. I really believe this is the most cynical thing I've ever seen. And you know that I'm right when you hear John Kerry talk about partitioning Syria. And I mentioned on the television show on Friday, this guy should be locked away for the rest of his life for even saying that. Let's divide the country into North Syria, South Syria, or something like that, because we're not getting anywhere. No, you're not, mate, because what was meant to happen was ISIS was going to destroy that country in its entirety. That's what was meant to happen. That's what you set them to do. But Assad is still there. Fantastically. I'm delighted about that. The Russians are obviously bolstering him and his army and his attempts to get rid of this group. And that doesn't suit. So we have to have a ceasefire so we can have a think about what we're going to do next. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's like a waking nightmare. Imagine what it's like for the Syrians. Associated Press say more than 250,000 Syrians were killed in the civil war, they're calling it. And millions more have been forced from their homes. Of course, that was all part of the plan as well. That was all part of the plan as well. I'll leave that there. I'm not going to get into it. I'll leave it. Like I said, it's going to be a shorter version of Sunday View today. And I did see something which made me laugh on the BBC today. A memorial remembering the British military personnel who died in the First Gulf War is to be unveiled 25 years after the conflict ended. The monument, which has 47 paving stones with the names of those killed, will be opened at the National Memorial Arboretum in Alroas in Staffordshire. The opening will be marked with a public dedication service later on. The Gulf War began in 1990 and it ended when Iraqi forces were driven from Kuwait in 1991. You know, memorials, for the British military personnel who died in the First Gulf World War. What about doing something for the British military personnel whose health has been destroyed, whose lives have been destroyed due to Gulf War syndrome and other ailments and injuries sustained during that war? What about the people killed in that war? What about a memorial for the people killed as a result of the US Britain-led invasion of Iraq in 2003? Over 1.5 million Iraqis obliterated. Millions more living with the health consequences of being bombarded with depleted uranium munitions. What about a memorial for those people? What about a reality where we didn't have absolutely, totally and utterly insane fucking psychopaths leading us into these absolutely illegal, brutal wars, which end up, which result in two things. One, the brutal slaughter of millions of innocent people, and two, the rendering of those countries completely uninhabitable and completely inhospitable, like Libya. How about a reality where the lunatics who make this happen, who make it work for the agenda, how about a reality where we didn't have to fucking talk about these stories? They are nothing. There are billions of us. All it takes is a couple of 100,000 people in this country to descend on London and to say enough is enough. We ain't going anywhere. We're not going to stand over it anymore. We're not going to be scared anymore. We're not going to live in fear. We're not going to accept the tyranny anymore. The creeping fascist super state that Britain is, that the European Union is. We're not going to have it. So you guys now, please just fuck off out of that building and we'll take it over. And we'll do it properly. And we'll give power back to communities. We'll hand sovereignty back to communities. We'll hand sovereignty back to people, to individuals. Unbelievable what's going on. Unbelievable. As I'm talking to you today, bombs made in this country are raining down on innocent men, women and children in Yemen by Saudi Arabia. You might know or you might not know the European Parliament, to be fair to it, has called for an absolute moratorium or an embargo on selling any weapons to the Saudis. They are such fucking psychopaths. Mass murderers. This doesn't have to be our reality. It's as simple as that. Only in humanity do the very, 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 very tiny few control the mass many. Let's do something about it. Because I've had enough of it. It's time for me to say that's it for today, for Sunday View. Thanks for listening to it. A little bit shorter than normal. I need a breather, and I will be back with you live tomorrow, Monday at 8 p.m. GMT for a week of, I hope, terrific radio shows. My producer and friend Claire Chambers-Calvy's put together some terrific guests for next week. So check us out on davidicke.com, on alternatecurrentradio.com, fabradiointernational.com and richieallen.co.uk every weeknight except Friday next week, 8 p.m. GMT. To support the programme, and it does need your support, please go to richieallen.co.uk and make a bank transfer or a PayPal donation. Thank you very much for listening to this. I hope some of it made sense to you. Do share it around on social media, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIcke.com.